We'll start. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Khadijah, and I'm from Yayasan Mendaki here in Singapore. I'm joined by my research collaborators from the Singapore University of Social Sciences, or SUSS, Ms. Jizhi, and also Professor Sylvia Chong. Today, we are sharing on a project collaboration between Mendaki and SUSS entitled The Use of Analytics for Learning Impact in a Self-Help Community Group. In line with today's session theme on big data in education and learning analytics, the aim of our project is to leverage on the use of data analytics to enhance the teaching and learning of disadvantaged Malay students here in Singapore. So this project is funded by Temasek Foundation Innovates, Singapore Millennium Foundation Research Grant Program. So this is our agenda for today. I will share a brief background on Mendaki and what we do. I will then introduce Mendaki's flagship program, that is the Mendaki Tuition Scheme. Next, we will then move on to the project background and aims before I hand the floor to Tita, where she will share the project methodology, applications, and findings. Finally, we will then wrap our presentation by sharing the findings, implications on Mendaki, and the future directions of the project. So to set the context of our project, the Malay community here in Singapore is one of the ethnic minorities with a resident population of about 13.4% as of June 2019. So this is in contrast to the ethnic majority of 74.4%. So table 1 shows the percentage of primary 1 student cohort that progressed to post-secondary education. So as we can see, back in the 1980s, only 32% of Malay students actually progressed to post-secondary. So this has very serious implications on the socio-economic mobility of the Malay community, especially during a time where Singapore was experiencing rapid social and economic growth. So responding to this situation, the government with community and self-help agencies like Mendaki worked together to improve the educational attainment of Malay community through various educational programs and services. Since then, the Malay community has made significant social and economic progress over the years. For example, there is an increased representation of Malay students in post-secondary institutions. However, while we celebrate this progress, we are cognizant that the attainment gaps still exist for the Malay community in relation to the ethnic majority. That is why Mendaki, as a self-help agency, works together with community partners and research collaborators such as SUSS to continuously enhance the provision of our programs and services. So who is Mendaki and what do we do? Mendaki is a pioneer self-help group that was formed in 1982 to uplift the socio-economic of the Malay community through education. So the concept of self-help was evident back then when Malay Muslim community leaders, including the Malay Muslim members of parliament, actually pooled community resources together and established Mendaki back in the 80s. And today we still continue this concept of self-help group where we continue to work with government agencies and community partners to empower and navigate the Malay community towards success. And this is done through the provision of educational programs for the community. So to achieve our mission to empower and navigate the Malay Muslim community towards success, Mendaki has 4 strategies. The first strategy is to empower parents to be the child's first teacher, nurturer, and partner. Strategy 2 looks into preparing children and youth to be resilient and future ready. And strategy 3 looks into empowering our workforce to be enterprising, connected, adaptable, and lifelong learners. And underpinning these 3 strategies is strategy 4, in which Mendaki will continue to enhance its organizational capacity to achieve excellence. As you can see from this strategy map, strategies 1 to 3 are interconnected with one another along the education continuum, and they aim to strengthen our end-to-end intervention and achieve optimal outcome. So the focus of today's presentation is actually on strategy 2, which is to prepare our children and youth to be resilient and future ready. And a key Mendaki program that aims to address this strategy is the Mendaki Tuition Scheme, or the MTS. So the Mendaki Tuition Scheme, or the MTS, started back in 1982 and has assisted more than 180,000 students. MTS aims to provide quality tuition at affordable rates to help students attain quality passes in their examinations. So while MTS is open to all students, to all Muslim students, about 70% of our student population are students from socio-economically disadvantaged background. MTS is a 32-week academic and developmental support program for primary 1 to secondary 5 students. So these are students ages 7 to 17 years old. And beyond academic intervention, we also support students' social-emotional well-being through mentoring and the ethics of care pedagogy. And digital learning has also been incorporated into the program to facilitate continuity in learning, especially during the pandemic. So with all these academic and developmental initiatives in place, why is Mendaki collaborating with SUSS on a learning analytics project? We at Mendaki understand the value and power of data to inform decision making, and we see SUSS as one of our valuable partners in our data journey. So this project with SUSS allows us to identify determinants of Mendaki students' academic performance and to explore the use of data for evidence-based decision making here in Mendaki. I will now hand the floor to teacher, where she will share on the project methodology, application, and findings. Teacher, please.
Thank you, Kat. So next, I'll be introducing our analysis methodology, followed by an application on the MTS dataset and the key findings from there. Leveraging on big data and learning analytics, we hope to achieve two key project aims, which are to identify early warning indicators and to generate insights for data-driven and evidence-based decision-making. We hope to achieve these goals by identifying natural grouping within MTS students so as to determine common characteristics of low academic performers and introduce targeted intervention and customized strategy to improve students' learning outcome. The main methodology used is cluster analysis, which is an unsupervised learning method to uncover underlying natural grouping within the data. Clustering variables such as students' demographic information, socioeconomic status will be used to determine which observations are similar and which are different. And similar observations will be grouped into the same cluster and they will share common characteristics. This method is widely used in many areas such as marketing, biology, finance, and so on, and it is ideal for designing targeted and customized strategy such that differentiated solutions or differentiated plans can be implemented to suit the unique needs in the different clusters. As different clustering algorithms have different definition of similarity, there is no one method that suits all data. So in this analysis, we have used two clustering algorithms for model comparison and selection, namely k-means and model-based clustering. So k-means clustering is a centroid-based method and it clusters based on distance, which means observations that are closer together in terms of Euclidean distance will be considered to be similar and grouped together. The pros of this method are that it is simple and fast to implement, and it only requires the computation of distance, and it has no strict statistical assumptions that has to be followed. However, due to the nature of distance measurement, this method does not work well for high-dimensional data as well as categorical data. As for model-based clustering, it is a distribution-based method and it clusters based on probability distribution, which means observations that are similar in their distribution and statistical property are grouped in the same cluster. The pros are that it is able to quantify the uncertainty in the clustering by using soft assignment, and the resulting clusters have formal statistical properties such as mean and covariance structure for interpretation. However, this is a very computationally expensive method and there are underlying assumptions that need to be followed. So the results from the different clustering models will be evaluated and compared based on their cluster quality, which is in terms of silhouette, and also the interpretation of the results, so as to choose a model that's reliable, insightful, and deployable. Next, let me introduce an application of cluster analysis on the MTS data, which consists students from the 2018 and 2019 cohorts. Analysis was conducted for both primary and secondary students, but today's presentation will only focus on the primary group. So clustering variables such as students' demographics, family background, and socioeconomic status variables are used for clustering, and the resulting clusters are evaluated for their academic performance trends by comparing the proportion of students who improve or worsen in their MTS tests. The software used is IBM SPSS Modeler, and these two are screenshots of the model results. So if we look at the one on the left, each column represents one cluster and each row represents one variable. By comparing the distribution of variables across the clusters, we are able to determine the dominating characteristics of each cluster. And since we are more interested in understanding the profile of lower academic performers, we will focus on that group. So some of the dominating characteristics of the lower academic performers are their parents are unemployed, They tend to come from single-parent family. A lot of them live in very small residence but has a large household size. Most of them are receiving subsidies and their family has a lower per capita income PCI than the other clusters. And lastly, they also tend to have higher absence rate in the MTS. So combining these findings with contextual knowledge will help us to understand the implications of such observations and subsequently how to address them. For example, having parents unemployed means that the family is facing financial difficulty. Being in a single parent family could suggest possible family instability. Having a large family living in small household could mean that there is lack of conducive study environment for the students. Receiving subsidies and having lower PCI could also suggest financial difficulty and also the lack of resources. And lastly, having high absence rate could mean that the student is not committed to study or that the student is occupied by other matters such as having to work part-time to support the family. So these insights can then be used to inform decision-making in Mendaki, which Kat will now elaborate more about. Kat, please.
Okay, so thank you, Jizhi. So we have shared the findings from the project and the possible implications on the learning experience of MTS students. So bearing those in mind, Mendaki will continue to journey with the Malay community, and we are committed to enhance the continuum of support for Malay students and their parents. So what do we mean by journeying? It means that Mendaki will provide end-to-end educational support starting from the early years and all the way until entry into the workforce. So one of the findings from this project highlights that families from lower SES are likely to not have access to sufficient learning resources. At Mendaki, we are committed to empower parents with skills and resources to be their children's first teachers, and this needs to be done early. So Mendaki has been strengthening its upstream support for young children through programs and public education initiatives that are targeted to parents with children ages 0 to 6 years old. So one of Mendaki's early years program is the Kelas Matematika or KMM. So KMM aims to equip and empower parents with mediated learning skills and resources to support their children's development in basic numeracy skills through activity-based learning. So as students progress through their educational journey, Mendaki continues to provide them with holistic educational support. So apart from academic support through the MTS, students who do not have conducive learning spaces may visit Mendaki's satellite centers and homework cafes to do their homeworks or revision. The project finding also highlighted that our students are likely to come from very big households and have several school-going siblings. Hence, access to personal learning devices is limited, as they would have to share one device with multiple family members who had to work and learn from home. To ensure that learning was not disrupted during the pandemic, Mendaki loaned out laptops to these students and facilitated the application for their own learning devices through the new PC Home Access program here in Singapore. We also provided additional learning resources online for easy access. Beyond academic intervention, students from disadvantaged backgrounds may face various challenges and are likely to not be fully engaged and motivated. So we are strengthening our mentoring initiative to motivate students and widen their learning opportunities and networks. This is done through the matching of youth mentors to our students, where these mentors serve as positive role models. The findings also show that families of MTS students are facing real challenges, such as unemployment. We know that this will have adverse impact on students' academic performance. To mitigate that, Mendaki is also committed to bridge employees to job and training opportunities. This is done through collaborations with national and other community agencies on career fairs across Singapore. In the spirit of lifelong learning, Mendaki also partners with companies to provide on-the-job training and upskilling opportunities. So in sum, these initiatives reflect Mendaki's commitment to provide holistic educational support for the Malay community at every life stage. So what's next for us? We will expand the study to include the use of qualitative approaches. This will help us to have an in-depth understanding of findings we've got from the data mining phase. We will be using the single case study approach, which will comprise of semi-structured interviews, focus group discussions, program observations and analysis of curriculum and policy documents. In conclusion, the use of learning analytics has provided insights from MTS student-centric data to inform Mendaki in our pedagogical development and decisions. And with that, we end our presentation. We'll be happy to take questions from the floor. Thank you.
thank you very much. We now have some time for questions from the floor. If you would like to raise any question, you can type in the Zoom chat and we'll read it out for you. Or you can also raise your hand and speak after we call your name. Are there any questions from the floor that you would like to ask the presenters? Anyone would like to raise questions?
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Hi, my name is Verily and I'm from Science Center Singapore. I saw the cluster analysis and the key means analysis. I was just interested how that transitioned into some of the findings and the implications. Yeah, because I think most of us are not very familiar with that kind of analysis. So it would be nice to know, like, for example, some details of like your variables and like how did you eventually go forward with the outcomes and the implications and action.
Maybe we go to slide 19. I think she's. Yeah, so you can see on the right side are basically the model results, and that are the dominating characteristics of the lower academic performers. And then when we combine that kind of model results with our contextual knowledge of MTS students, then we try to understand what's the underlying reason that we are observing such trends. And then so this part will require us to work closely with Mendaki staff to understand the context, the situation of their students, and then from there they can think about ways to translate that kind of implication into actual deployments, which were shared in the next slide.
Perhaps I can add in also down here that our basket of variables are in 3 key baskets. So we actually have a basket of variables. That's now you're asking about variables on their demographics. And then the other basket of variables will then be on their things like employment, their per capita, their subsidy, and things like the social economic kind of basket of variables. And the last basket of variables is on their academic performance. So somehow with this clustering, and we also did a decision 3 with it, the socioeconomic status comes out very significant. I must also add that this is part 1 of the whole data mining process. The second part, we added school performance variables. So that has just been added in, so it's not part of the sharing here. So we have gone into Ministry of Education to actually mine some of their school data so that we can also add in data that is on their academic performances outside of MTS. The variables here are all from Mendaki. So the project has been expanded to add in, to integrate variables also from Ministry of Education. So I don't know whether that helps answer that question.
Yeah, it helps. Thanks for the clarification. Just to check, so I know the IBM platform was actually used for the analysis. Was there a reason why, for example, R was not used?
Very, very basic reason that our university uses SPSS modeler to teach, so it was free.
Okay, understand.
We are happy to use any platform, but because this is we try to give back as much as possible to the self-help group, so we try not to spend too much money on equipment and things like that.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
I think there's a question on the chat, right? About Malay students. Why Malay students? What about Indian and Chinese? This project was initiated by Mendaki. So this is not a project that the university went to look for it. So Mendaki approached my team, and then so Mendaki represents the Muslim community. There's again no stopping SINDA. SINDA is the Indian community to approach us. I think for the Chinese For the Chinese community, they probably have a lot of resources to help them with these things. Yeah, I believe you're short of time.
Yeah, thank you very much